Hello, and welcome to Wicked Encounters. I'm your host, Allie, and today I have a story I'd like to share with you. It involves a group of individuals playing as investigators, and how, unlike in shows, sometimes the monsters are real. Let's begin. Thin branches cracked on a gentle wind. Leaves rustled and tumbled along a murky ground, leaving a thick layer of ambience for the group to bathe in. 5 people, all there for the same reason, all there to catch the one thing that no one has ever managed to catch on tape. Goatman. With no footage to have ever backed up his appearance, the group is running blind, with no idea what they're looking for. The midnight air cools their skin as they rustle the leaves at their feet, their shoes crunching and grinding on the earth. One of the members of the group recounts reported sightings of Goatman, although even they must admit that it's pure speculation. Standing at roughly 7 feet tall, Goatman creeps around the woods in Waterford, PA. Most obviously, he is a goat-human hybrid that is most commonly credited with the deaths of canines and other small animals in the surrounding woods. However, more recently, there have been a few missing persons cases that are beginning to gain public attention, as one of the leading rumors credits Goatman with their disappearances. Human deaths have been associated with Goatman in the past, although they are typically not his forte. That being said, the disappearance of a young woman and her son has led the group to the woods. Knowing that the police would never look for the Goatman, the group has taken matters into their own hands to ensure that Goatman is not responsible. The woods do nothing to satiate the fear and anxiety that the group feels as they continue their trek through the forest. Twigs snap both at their feet and in the distance, leaving a sense of wonder as to where every sound they hear is coming from. With 3 men and 2 women, the group is adamant as they scan their flashlights across the barren trees and derelict forest, that if they do not find Goatman, they will at least find the ones responsible for the disappearance of the woman and her son. Of course, the group would never have been able to imagine what they were getting themselves into. The sound of running water breaks the silence, leading the group to an abandoned bridge that connected both sides of a ravine, rampaging and rushing water beneath it. A derelict building stands on the opposite side of the bridge, leaving the group no choice but to cross, for fear that the woman and her son may be in the building. The bridge leaves nothing to be desired in terms of its stability. Its rickety nature forces a sudden sway to it as the group crosses one by one. It creaks and groans like it's made of wood, but its concrete material is far from any type of wood, only advocating for the age of the bridge, as well as the duration of which it has remained untouched by human hands. Regardless, the group crosses and finds themselves at the old building that sits on the bank of the rushing water. The door creaks and groans louder than the bridge had, causing the leading member of the group to open it abysmally slow, as though that would somehow lessen the noise. Inside, cobwebs are the leading decorating material of the building, with dust caking everything that remained still over years of human absence. This does not deter the group, as they are still just as determined to find Goatman, or at the very least, find the missing woman and her son. However, one of the members, a younger man who had been hesitant to leave on the search in the first place, begins to forcefully wipe sweat from his brow, his eyes running in anxious fury across anything and everything. His doubt and his fear become apparent to everyone, leaving a level of anxiousness to blanket the entire group as they begin to worry about what he might do should something, anything, happen. The light of their flashlights gleam off the broken panes of the building, reflecting back inside. One of the other men, a taller man with a thick beard and gruff voice, informs them that there appears to be a basement and notions that they should investigate. The younger man is beyond hesitant, putting up a fuss and even a bit of a struggle before finally agreeing to check it out. He, along with the older man and one of the women, descend into the depths of the howling building, the cracks in the building creating the whistling and howling of the wind that they all heard. The remaining man and woman remain up top, ascending a flight of stairs to find themselves in a dusty and ominous office space. Downstairs, the trio moves slowly, very slowly, through the seemingly endless tunnels. The only sound accompanying them is the whistling wind creeping through the cracks. The water can no longer be heard by them, but soft drops of water plop against the ground somewhere off in the dark distance of the halls. The younger man's breathing is uncontrollable, escaping from his lips in panicked spurts and stuttered gasps. The woman among them attempts to strengthen his composure by informing him that there's nothing in the building, for they surely would have encountered it by now. However, even as she says it, her quivering lips give way to the truth, the notion that even she does not believe her own words. Upstairs, the duo rummages through dusty boxes and sift through a countless number of files. Vaguely, in the main room, the woman catches a glimpse of something unexplainable. Her view is distorted through a broken glass pane. Therefore, she does not get the best glimpse, but it frightens her nonetheless. A tall outline of a figure, very human-like in nature, scuttles across the main room, down the stairs that the duo had ascended to find the office space. She quickly flees the room and leans on the balcony, attempting to catch a proper sight of what she saw. However, by the time she lays her bare eyes on the room, whatever it was had fled. The door they came through sways with a groan, creaking against its own hinges. The duo exchange nervous glances as they attempt to decipher what the woman may have seen. Downstairs, the younger man begins to hyperventilate, his fear totally and utterly consuming him. The woman assures him that he is fine, but he claims that he is not, that he's scared witless and that the missing woman and her son were not worth his fear, that they were likely dead anyway. The taller man takes the younger man by the collar, shouting spit into his face as he attempts to calm him down. However, juxtaposing his actions were with his words. Just then, a rattling off in the darkness startles the trio back into their senses, as if sensing that something was there. The three agree that they should flee. However, as they do, the younger man releases a blood-curdling cry as he bears witness to something that the other two do not. The duo upstairs hear the wailing cry carry its way up the steps and into the main room, which they descended back into. Moments later, the trio from downstairs rushes into the main room, joining the five of them back together again. Only something is off about the young man. His eyes are white, darting around the room with a panicked frenzy, shaking in their sockets. The group argues for a moment before an ear-piercing screech follows closely behind them, flowing from the depths of the basement into the ears of the group. Without wasting a single second, every member of the group flees from the building. The younger man's eyes continue to appear lifeless but terrified, all while the group carries him back across the bridge and into the woods. A light fog has settled across the forest, inhibiting their vision to nearly nothing. The group shouts and screams at each other as a few of them claim that something is following them. The younger man is entirely unable to follow anything that happens, as his dazed expression suggests that his thoughts are elsewhere. Regardless, the remaining members of the group still shout in a panic, brushing away thick mounds of leaves on the ground and swiping away leafless and dying branches on thin trees. In their hurry, the group stumbles upon a large gap in the ground that angles down at a near sheer drop. 4 of the group tumbles over the side, leaving one of the 2 women screaming after them as the 4 somersaults over one another on their far drop. Vaguely, as if part of some distant dream, the younger man, with his vision momentarily returned to him, catches sight of a figure far taller than the woman standing directly behind her. Of course, his vision is obscured as it fills with mud-soaked leaves and dirt while they continue to roll to the bottom of the drop. Once there, the group moans and groans in pain as the taller man exclaims that he believes his arm to be broken. Upon inspection, it is bent at an unruly angle, with the slight shimmering of a pale white bone breaking through the skin of his elbow. Unsure of where they are, and worried about the woman who did not follow behind them in their hasty tumble, the group is determined to fix the taller man's arm while also attempting to learn their whereabouts. They saunter along the murky ground, soft mud squishing and rising under their feet as they make their way to an unknown destination. Shortly into their trek, a gut-wrenching and visceral scream nearly shatters their eardrums. It is feminine and it is full of pain and suffering. The group, all terrified and scared out of their minds, determine that they must flee the forest no matter what. Eventually, they stumble upon a break in the ravine with an odd path that leads straight up through the break. The path is clearly man-made, but has not seen a human footprint in many years. Regardless, the group makes their way through the break and are brought to their knees at the sight that awaits them. The woman who had not fallen, displayed, like a stuffed pig, a prize, as if brought to them and showcased out of pure joy and an unhealthy level of proudness at the claimed kill. Her eyes are missing, her arms and legs bent completely behind her back to hang her from a limbering branch of a dying tree. Intestines spill from her stomach like loose string dangling from an unfurled hand, causing a number of the group to retch. Their stomachs turn, tears begin to flow, and bile spews from their mouths. None of them had any idea what hell looked like, but they imagined it was not short of what they were experiencing. The group enters a debate on whether to bring her down and bury her, or just leave her. Ultimately, the decision is not theirs to make, as the same ear-piercing squeal that they heard in the derelict building fills their ears once again. Wasting no time, the group breaks into a sprint, every man and woman for themselves. The younger man, unlike the others, is not so much a fool and realizes that he must stay with the group, or some at the very least. He hoots and hollers, attempting to grab the attention of anyone, and preferably everyone, to no avail. None listen, but all of their shadowy figures disappear into the thickening fog. The only one that remains within eyesight is the taller man, stumbling into the fog with his broken arm flailing at his side like a pool noodle. The younger man, without an idea of what else to do, instinctively follows him. The younger man runs for what feels like an eternity, the cold beads of sweat trickling his brow and wetting the rest of his body. He continues to hold the taller man in his sight. However, he gradually begins to pull away, leaving the younger man to increase his pace at a rate he is woefully unfamiliar with. Panting, sweating, tired, exhausted even, the younger man is on the verge of giving up when the taller man suddenly stops dead in his tracks, giving the younger man the opportunity to catch up to him. Suddenly standing at his side, he demands an answer for why he did not answer him, when the taller man hastily cups his good hand over the younger man's mouth, tackling him and bringing them both to the ground. The younger man begins to fight back, but quickly stops after hearing the sound that had clearly made the taller man draw to a halt. Hooves clop on the ground, accompanied by the sound of wet mud squishing and spurting under the great weight of the towering figure that slowly came into view. Two prominent horns extend from either side of a large head that lazily sways back and forth as the rest of the body appears to move with a certain level of uncaring. Slumped shoulders, accompanied by the lazy nature of the walk, advocate for a tiny body, but that is far from the view the two men lay their eyes on. Defined muscles and a broad chest are what the creature sports, and it takes no time at all for the two of them to realize the identity of the towering figure. Goatman. As if on cue, or as though it knew of their location, the creature brings itself to a stuttering stop, swiveling its head as though it were moving independently of the rest of its body. The taller man had tackled them down a small slump in the ground, located behind a thin, but thick enough, tree. Goatman did not appear to notice them while it scanned the forest around, and it's only when the younger man meets the gaze of the Goatman does he feel true terror. Goatman does not see him, but the glowing eyes, accompanied by a gruff, mangled, and uncared-for beard, send a chill and a stuttering notion of breathing through the younger man. Fear is all he knows as Goatman brings itself down to all fours, sniffing the ground like a wild animal. Before the young man knows it, Goatman breaks off into the fog, dissolving into a shadow half the size of the original that he was borne witness to. The taller man struggles to bring himself to his feet with one arm as he informs the younger man that they're safe. However, he barely makes it to the balls of his feet before the same screech as always pierces their ears, and the taller man is ripped off into the fog. Vaguely, while holding his head down in pain from the screech, the young man catches sight of the same dissolving shadow breaking away in an all-four sprint, with one hand wrapped tightly around the taller man's collar. The young man cannot hear the screaming over the ear-piercing shriek, but he sees the taller man's mouth held open wide, terror, sadness, and a sense of plea emanating from his somber eyes as he disappears into the fog with Goatman. The young man can do nothing but stand completely still, but not out of choice, of course, out of fear. He remains stationary for far longer than even he intended to, unsure of what he would even do when he did move. However, a sense of escape overwhelms him as he realizes that he must flee the forest and spread the word of Goatman, bringing attention to the creature's hideout. With his resolve planted firmly in his mind, the younger man breaks off into the forest, uncaring of how much attention he may bring on himself. Of course, he barely makes it a yard before the fear utterly consumes him again, as an unknown sound fills his ears. He comes to a dead stop, listening for the direction of the sound. Unknowing why he did it, the younger man suddenly finds himself in search of the noise, peeking past trees and bobbing and weaving in between them as well. It takes very little time before the sound becomes far more apparent, a slight squelching as well as the sound of something being ripped apart are the only sounds that begin to fill the younger man's ears as he approaches, closer and closer to where the sound is emitting from. Crickets begin to chirp, and wind whistles through the air as the younger man pries from behind a tree, the sound emitting from directly in front of him. However, after scanning the forest floor, his eyes tracing every leaf and every branch, there's nothing there. It's only when a drop of rain falls from the sky that the younger man looks up into the mangled mesh of intertwining branches that he realizes that it was no raindrop at all, and that the taller man was certainly not going to be returning to his aid. Hanging by his feet, the taller man dangles loosely, his arms hanging limp, while Goatman sits like a bird perched on a branch, shoving his clawed hand into the stomach of the tall man, ripping out whatever he was able to grab from inside. Much like the first woman, his eyes are missing and his mouth is held wide open, as though he was still screaming in pain from being eaten alive. The young man could form no words as bile began to encroach the back of his throat, tickling his tongue and nearly causing him to gag. Aware that if he made a single move, Goatman would find him, he remained as still as possible. However, Mother Nature had something else in mind for him, as he slowly took steps to back away from Goatman. His heel found comfort in a protruding rock, sending him tumbling backwards. Like a deer that had just been disturbed, Goatman leapt from the tree and did the opposite of what any deer would do, which would be to flee, and instead grabs hold of the younger man's ankles as he attempts to flee. He is no match for Goatman's strength as it drags him through the woods. Fallen branches scrape his skin as mud and dirt fill in the holes. The younger man screams in agony and fear, but is helpless to do anything about it. He banks off a countless number of trees before Goatman finally brings him to a stop. An eerie silence claims the forest, as the younger man shakes violently, slowly, hesitantly, turning his body around to attempt to find out what happened. Goatman sits like a feral animal, its head cocked as though the younger man made a sound that interested it. It is covered in blood from head to toe, its body turned from a paler white to a dampening red. The younger man cannot find words as breathing is lost to him, fear utterly consuming him. He resembles a statue made of ice, completely frozen and cold to the touch, as it feels as though even his blood ceases to move. Unaware of what to do, the suspension hanging thick as Goatman only continues to stare at him, the younger man makes a slight movement with his hand, a movement he came to regret the moment he did it. Goatman releases a deafening cry as it leapt onto the younger man, thrashing and clawing his body at the sudden movement. What exactly had triggered Goatman about the movement is unknown, but it sent it into a wild frenzy of fear and anger. It ripped the younger man apart in a matter of moments, leaving him with just enough life to remain vaguely conscious, although in excruciating pain. Wasting no time, Goatman begins dragging the younger man through the woods once again, this time dragging him for much longer. Perhaps it was the pain, or perhaps it was because Goatman simply dragged him for some time, but it felt like an eternity for the young man before the familiar derelict building filled his vision. His head bounced on the steps as Goatman dragged him into the basement, the dank and dark feeling almost overwhelming the immense amount of pain he felt. Suddenly, a rotting and pungent stench fills the younger man's nose as Goatman drops him in a corner of a dark room, just enough light pouring in from a crack in the wall to reveal the two other members of the group that had fled into the fog. Their bodies were in shambles as well, But it was the sight of a groveling woman and the lifeless corpse of a child in her arms that caught the younger man's attention the most. The only thing that the younger man could think, as Goatman began to pick them apart, was how the mother and son had not been worth his fear. I hope you enjoyed this story. Overcoming our fears is important. It's how we grow as individuals. But remember, our fears are our mind and body reminding us to be safe. Listen carefully, pick your battles wisely, or you may one day find yourself in a situation that was best avoided. Have a good day now.